Welcome back to our show, your show, Let's Talk Stocks. And of course, you're joining us for part 2 of our discussion with Mr. Omar Chedda. Of course, he's a sustainable development consultant. He works with the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce, also having served at the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation. And he has a wealth of ideas as to how we can grow our economy. Take a look at the discussion.
At developing more cities, more towns, rather than having everything concentrated in Kingston, because land in Kingston is now very scarce.
Here's the thing though, and I'm happy so that you touched on this land and so on, because while the grass is growing, the horse is starving.
Yeah.
I'm looking at Kingston. And I see a recent residential development now earmarked for East Kingston,
right,
and so on possibilities. But while there's lack in Kingston, there's still so many. Just behind us, there's a lot of rundown buildings. And
yes,
so on.
so right.
Do we need to get to a point where we take Kingston restoration in hand and take it a little bit more seriously? It's been a lot of talk over the years, but potentially the waterfront, the downtown Kingston proper.
Yeah.
It's a whole lot of high-end real estate that is really wasting in low-end.
You're so right, because maybe I was a bit incorrect to say that there's no land. There some land is still available, but those lands are in areas where people might not want to conduct business. And so that is why the social aspect has to be taken into account along with the economic aspect. Because as you have been seeing, we have this crime issue, a lot of homicides, gang activity, which has, been exported from Kingston to Westmoreland, Hanover, St. James, right, even St. Anne. And so we cannot ignore the social aspect, right? So a lot of these decaying communities, a lot of these squatter communities, we need to look at how these areas can be developed and proper facilities put in place so the people there feel that they are part of the society and that they have hope, right? Because part of the challenge in getting land to do business sometimes is that, if you put your business at a certain location, you might be subject to extortion, to robberies, and so this constrains businesses.
I don't want to dwell too much on it, but it is a serious drag that I don't think the government and even the private sector has sat down to take a proper look. We do the cursory glance, we talk about the crime numbers and states of emergency, and we argue whether it should be state or not state, whether it should be a crime plan or not crime plan. But the reality is, if we were to redevelop some of these areas and repurpose some of these areas, residential, commercial, the guys doing the extortion, they're not in hiding somewhere up in the moon.
Right.
They're right there. You can see who they are.
Right.
Why aren't we taking a more business-centered approach, even to the solution of crime?
Actually, I worked on a project when I was at the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation that looked at the redevelopment of the entire downtown area. It was a project spearheaded by Professor Gladstone Hutchinson, the former head of Planning Institute. He has been overseas for many years, but he came back for a while to work on this project. And it looked at creating this partnership, a partnership between the community, the government, and the private sector, and to focus on wealth building assets, rather, because a lot of the social work that has been done, that is going on, it's looking at poverty. So he changed the paradigm to say, let's stop looking at poverty and start looking at wealth building, right? So moving from a negative perspective to a positive,
Of course.
what are the assets in these communities, in these areas? Both infrastructure and people assets, the skills and the culture, and how to mobilize this. And this is not just an abstract concept. He actually implemented such a project in the US, in depressed communities, which was very successful.
I believe that concept that you spoke to is exactly what is needed here.
Right.
And we need to be having much more of that conversation. Can you imagine? When you go to New York, the waterfront is prime real estate.
Right.
But here we are sitting
Yeah.
on prime real estate almost.
I did a training course in Colombia, and I'm in Medellin. I don't know if you know about Colombia. Medellin was once the drug capital of Colombia, right? And there was a famous drug lord who was killed there. Can't remember his name now. But anyway, while I was there, I did a tour of what they call the communal. And there was a time you could not go into those areas, just like Jamaica, Colombia is a bit different because their conflict had a political aspect to it. There were guerrillas which were fighting the go, and even now they still have a problem. Not everything has been solved, but in that particular location, Medellin, I was very impressed. They realized that they had to integrate these marginalized communities into the wider society. They provided them with cheap transportation to get into the city center. In Colombia, the poor live on the hills. And it was very difficult for them to get into the city center where most of the jobs were located. So they build overhead trolleys that take them down. Very interesting. And they put in place a lot of recreational facilities where the young people could use their time. And they organize economic activities. For instance, the tour, it takes you to different restaurants, different art spots, and at each spot you purchase something, and the money goes to that community, So it's a lot like community tourism. We're doing something similar now with the art project, right? But we need to expand it, and put it into the control of the community members, not just an uptown person who is because what you find in Jamaica sometimes when the person who organizes these things moves on, it dies, right? So it has to be the community, who understands it, who's managing it.
All right, let's go back a little bit. Couple of years ago, we spoke about the logistics hub, and Jamaica building out a logistics centered economy.
Right.
That would fall directly under your
Right.
What's happening with that? How are we?
Well, actually, a lot has been done. The harbor has been expanded and divested to a French company. The road network has been expanded, and the BPO sector, the business processing, has expanded tremendously, has provided a lot of jobs. But now we're looking at moving up the value chain, higher value added jobs. So we're looking at zones that will offer manufacturing facilities, recreational, sporting facilities, and linking that with industries like medical tourism, for instance. So some of these zones would supply the pharmaceuticals and the supplies that the medical tourism industry would need. And so, we're looking at creating these linkages between the zones and what is happening in the rest of the economy.
All right. So that's great. We'll look at the logistics and so on. I want to go back to financing.
Right.
I realize through the DBJ and so on, JBDC,
Right.
you've done a lot of work to set up some amount of funding, and you did mention funding as a big issue. But it's more been debt financing, and you spoke about using special purpose vehicles and so on. Are we seeing more in terms of equity, private equity, driving some of these people to the stock market itself as options, possibly a nano stock exchange? We've seen the success of the junior market and even smaller entry market in terms of capital requirements for the smaller players. again, it helps you get them more formal.
Yes, actually, we have been looking at a nano stock exchange, how to put that in place, and we've been looking at some best practices in different areas of the world. I know China, although China is very different from Jamaica in terms of size, but they have implemented a sort of a nano stock exchange, and we're looking at how we could implement something similar in Jamaica. It would have to be ring fenced,
Yeah.
and the risks would have to be managed, you know, and it couldn't be open to every investor. Maybe, you know, specialized investors who understand the small business industry. But it's something that we're definitely looking at.
You know what's funny? That takes us right back to where we started with the knowledge-based economy. So
Right.
you're saying we need to build out that kind of capacity among
Right.
our people, which takes us into the financial sector and
Right.
the capacity there to understand what is needed to finance and grow, you know, smaller businesses, which is the epicenter of growth in any economy.
Right, right. You know, I've been attending the stock exchange conferences for over 10 years now, and we have a lot of presenters with that experience. And, you know, I've found some of these presentations to be very, very interesting. And I think we need to create that linkage between what is happening, you know, in some more developed markets with what is happening here, build out our regional stock exchange, and get some of that expertise.
Absolutely, absolutely, great point. And I'll tell you, the Jamaica Stock Exchange has been doing some partnerships where people, as far as way as Nairobi and Ghana,
Right,
are looking at the model of our junior stock market. to
right,
say,
right.
That's the model that we want to follow.
Yes, yes.
So let us partner with the JC.
Yeah.
So I think there's much more that government of Jamaica, through policies, and the private sector, of course, to lead
Right.
and carry it, drive the growth
Yes,
that we
yes,
can
yes.
do to really grow this economy. Absolutely great to have had you on the
I was
program.
glad to be here, enjoy the conversation.
Yes. All right, so that's how we're doing it, and you heard Omar. He's telling you about all the possibilities that we can take on, the things that we can do as a people to get Jamaica growing in 2024 and beyond. As we always say here on Let's Talk Stocks, we give you information to make better financial decisions. Come back with us tomorrow morning at 9. We'll have another informative program lined up for you.